Can we bring a glass? Does this work? We have such a large crowd here. You have to quiet everyone down. Thank you for coming. What I wanted to do was open up the public hearing for the FY 2025 Medfield Public School budget. And I'll start with a roll call. Tonight is here.
Michelle Kirkby here.
Will Horn here.
Diana Frischella here.
And Leo is not here, and he is not on Zoom?
Correct.
Right. Okay. Okay, great. And just point of order, really, I think we're going to walk through the presentation. Dr. Marston will do that shortly. We'll take a first set of questions from the school committee. I think, we may ask questions during if that's okay, unless it gets, there's a great deal of them. Then we will open it up for anybody in the public for questions. What's different about this than regular school committee meetings, I think there may be more discussions as those questions come up. Continue questions from the school committee, if there are any. We would then close the public forum. We would then take a vote on the budget. When that happens, so far the budget is something that Dr. Morrison and the schools really have been working on. They say the word own. Yeah. But we would take a vote where it becomes the school committee's budget. We would continue to work both with the schools and with the towns and try to get to a point where we feel confident that we have a budget that the town would approve in the town meeting. So just a reminder, if I didn't get that right, let me know. But that's the process. Again, thanks for coming. And with that, I'll ask Dr. Marston to walk through the material.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, those of you who are here. We appreciate it. Always like the opportunity to present the fiscal year budget to the school committee and to the public. A lot of work has gone into this since we started in late October and early November, and have gone through a pretty lengthy process to get to this point. And I know that at the December school committee meeting, I was able to give you that initial draft, the school committee, which had a really large increase in it, and we've been working really hard to get that increase down. So I will go through the slides and happy to answer any questions, but I think it's fairly informative as we go through. I always start off with some really important background information, especially for folks who aren't familiar with school budgets or the process. Superintendent is listed in the law as the budget officer, and the three general areas of responsibility for the superintendent as budget officer will be budget preparation, budget presentation, and budget administration. And tonight's budget is often called the superintendent's recommended budget, and there's no official FY25 budget until the Medfield School Committee votes, and hopefully you folks will vote this evening to accept this. If the budget is voted tonight, it's submitted to the town, but it's not necessarily the final budget. And I think that's something that is really important to understand, is that this is an evolving process and really sometimes doesn't finish until right before town meeting. But whatever the number is tonight probably will not be the number that is shared with the town at town meeting. Changes are still made after the school committee votes, and the budget organization and the chart of accounts is assigned by DESE. So sometimes when we go through the budget, things don't make a lot of sense the way they're organized, and that's because we do the chart of accounts that DESE recommends to us, which helps us at the end of the year when Michael has to do the end of the year report. They require a certain chart of accounts and process to complete that report. Important budget terms as we go through this presentation. Chapter 70 are the state funds that are earmarked for education. Those funds go directly to the town of Medfield. They do not come to the school department. Circuit breaker is a state reimbursement for special education costs. The state establishes a threshold of cost, and anything that we spend over that, we get reimbursed. Typically, last couple of years been great. It's been 75% reimbursement, but we've also seen as low as 42% back in probably FY09, FY10 in those years. Circuit breaker was not fully funded. And the interesting thing about circuit breaker too is the addition of transportation that's been in the last couple of years, which has been a great addition and change that the legislature made during this process. So that is part of circuit breaker at this point. Collective bargaining agreement, or CBAs, and that's the contracts we have with our teachers, teacher assistants, custodians, secretaries, and cafeteria workers. Steps, lanes, percent increase in longevity, and that's the pay structure that you see in the CBA. Step is a yearly increase on the salary grid. Lanes are increased based on degree attainment, and that's horizontal. Percent increase is the amount added to the base, and longevity is bonus time, bless you, bonus time accrued in Medfield. Full-time equivalent is FTE. You'll see that throughout the presentation. That's a full-time employee or a fraction of a full-time. Level service budget is the same people and same programs. This budget really isn't much more than a level service. There's a couple of additional positions that are in there, but it's essentially a level service budget that keeps the same people and programs within the district. And then there'll be a couple of slides at the end in which we talk about our capital budget, which is separate from the operating budget and typically involves large purchase items or repairs to our buildings or technology purchases. So here is the setup for this evening. We'll talk about our mission statement, our new mission statement. That was part of our new process that we went through last year. FY25 budget process, the assumptions we used when we developed this, the drivers that were in the budget, the strategic initiatives that relate to the FY25 budget, our funding sources and revenue. We have a transition plan to full-day kindergarten for all students without tuition, which we'll talk a little bit about that. Per pupil expenditures, kind of where we stack up around area districts, an analysis of FY25. We have the capital budget, and then going forward, what our plans are. So our mission statement has been revised, and this was all part of our strategic plan process last year. Really excited about this. We have this mission statement hanging in every classroom and every room in the district. Medfield Public Schools, in partnership with families in the community, fosters a safe, inclusive learning environment, empowering our students to meet high standards, adapt to change, and become responsible, contributing members of our society. So the process to date, we have a lengthy process that we go through. School committee established the budget timeline earlier in the fall. Then the leadership team met and established some of the priorities for their individual schools. Principals, directors, and department chairs developed their budgets. Michael and I conducted 21 budget meetings with principals, department chairs, and directors to review their requests. Then we met to review the budget requests and input. And then the superintendent and director of finance, Michael and I, met to develop the budget, and then we presented the initial first pass budget at the December meeting, which is always our initial first pass when we look at all the information we've gathered through all of our meetings in the fall. So the assumptions that we made during this process, federal entitlement grants we level funded, and we typically get a lot of money, the 94-142 or Fund Code 240, which is special education, get over $600,000 for that. We've actually started to get Title I money again. We didn't have Title I for a few years, and now we've got Title I money based on changing demographics. So that we're looking at that to be level funded from the federal government. Chapter 70 will be slightly increased. So we are one of, and the budget came out yesterday, one of 212 districts in the state that were announced yesterday that are level service, hold harmless school districts, which means we get the minimum aid of $30 per student. That's all we get is an increase. So last year there were 24 districts that got the $30 per student, and now there's 212. So the state is kind of pulling back a little bit on the funding for school districts, but that's a slight increase, which equals about $71,000 over last year's Chapter 70. Continuation and a reduction of tuition for full-day kindergarten. So you'll see a couple of slides on what we want to do with that to reduce full-day kindergarten for next year and then reduce the tuition again the following year. And then circuit breakers we talked about will be funded at 75%. I know that there are calls by the Mass Association of School Superintendents to fund circuit breaker at 90%, but 75 is what we plan to when we made this budget. Our drivers are fairly typical in what we've had in years past. I think 80+% of every school budget deals with personnel costs. So our CBA agreements and our contracts, our transportation, we're in year 4 of our current contract with Conley, and we have Accept Collaborative for our special education transportation. We've added in-district positions in FY24 for special education. We have one in for FY25, and then out-of-district placements, you'll see an increase in that. Continue with our professional development. We feel strongly about that, and you'll see later in the meeting when we review our status for the strategic plan during the other agenda for the regular meeting, we've had a lot of professional development already this year, and we continue to be committed to that. And then technology, we have to replace end-of-life equipment, and certainly our software licenses, the costs have gone up each year, so that does not change this year as well. So looking at our strategic plan and what some of the initiatives are in this budget, maintaining our current staffing levels for continued academic excellence, rigor, and opportunities for students and supports for students, and that's really important. That's job number one for us, to make sure that we do that. And this budget absolutely does that. We have the transitioning to full-day kindergarten for all students, and that's tuition free. Funding for professional development around culturally responsive instruction, restorative practices, and literacy instruction, again, from our strategic plan. Recommendations for increases to special education staffing, implementing communication audit review recommendations, and then supporting our capital budget needs, which are all in priority 4 in the strategic plan. So taking a look at our current school year in FY24, there's always 3 components to our budget, and lots of times you'll see districts talk about just 2 components, the Chapter 70 and the local contribution, but we feel it's important to talk about that other category, which is our grants, tuitions, and fees. You'll notice that if you've seen these presentations before, that our other grants, tuitions, and fees is typically around $3 million, but in FY24 it's up to $5.3 million. That's 2 reasons. One is we got over $1 million in circuit breaker this year, which we weren't anticipating to get that much. And also our food service, because it is free lunch and breakfast for all students in the state right now, we still get reimbursed by the federal government. So we are getting a lot of reimbursement from the federal government that's equaling $1 million in FY24, which we're going to start to put some of those funds into the capital in our cafeterias. We have old ovens, old freezers, old refrigerators, all that stuff. So we're going to try to upgrade that in the capital plan and use those funds to do that. So it's just an important thing to remember. Although our budget's $41 million in FY24, it actually costs $46 million to run the district as you see it, because of what we use the other costs for. And then it's also important to remember that we also have funding to Tri-County and Norfolk Aggie. So we don't have the Norfolk Aggie number yet, but Tri-County, it's going to be $107,000 from the district. And don't forget, the town also approved the building project for Tri-County, so that'll be another cost that the town will be paying towards Tri-County. So it's not just education funding for us. There are other districts that receive money from the town of Medfield. So some of the projections we have for FY25 in terms of our other outside of the operating budget, again, we're looking at our state and federal grants around $700,000. Our tuitions, you'll see, are lower than FY24 because of the reduction that we're presenting tonight in kindergarten tuition. School lunch, there's that $1 million again. We're anticipating that. Athletic fees at $300,000. Various receipts, $310,000, and that's things like parking fees, gate receipts, those kinds of things. Private grants and gifts at $200,000. So that's what we get from our PTO, MCPE, MMA, all those supports that we have in local organizations within our community that give us those gifts. We're really, really proud of that and are pleased that we can continue to have those partnerships. And then circuit breaker at $730,000, and that's what we're predicting. That could be a little bit, we could have a little more than that, but right now when we built this budget, that's our projection. Another thing to just talk about too is that we fund a lot of the FTEs outside of our budget. So we're almost employing 60 people in the district outside of our operating budget. So just to put that in perspective, if you, on the town side, if you would look at the police department and the fire department, they have 47 employees total for those 2 departments. So we're almost funding a whole department, so to speak, on the town, a couple departments on the town side, outside of our operating budget. And we do that through our grants and tuitions. So we also generate revenue that goes right to the town of Medfield. One of the things that we've done in the past is, and we continue to do, is our Medicaid reimbursement program. So that involves, that's only money that the school department can generate, and that involves our staff looking at schedules and making sure that they put down the time they work with certain students. And we submit all that information. When we submit all that, we get money back. And sometimes it takes a while for that to come in. Some years are better than others with that in terms of the federal reimbursement with Medicaid. But so far in our last few months, actually more than a few months, almost a year and a half, it's been $19,000. In FY22 and FY23, we had budget turnbacks combined of $163,000. So those turnbacks are at the end of the fiscal year. If we have money left over, we send it back to the town. That's what we do. We don't just try to buy a bunch of things and just try to spend it. No, we're all on the same team. We put money back, and that's our turnback, 163,683. And then Owen's done some really good work with grants on technology purchases. And we got a reimbursement on that this past year, and that went directly back to the town. So that was $109,000. So in the last couple of years, we've returned and generated for the town $292,301. So almost $300,000 in that generation. Again, that's only money that we can do as a school district. So I'm going to do a kind of a high-level review of the transition into full-day kindergarten for all, and that's just because it's part of this budget process. But I think probably at the February meeting or meeting after that, Michael and I will probably do a more in-depth to kind of go through the process and maybe drag Missy in too to do that process too. So just looking at the transition plan with the revenue and what we're looking at for students. So in FY24, our current year, we are getting tuition from 173 students. And we have the asterisk there because we have some students on scholarship and some students on reduced rate, and we did not include them in this number. So that's 605,500 of total revenue. So we're looking at reducing tuition in our recommendation next year, 2,750. And again, we're projecting 172 students, and we took into account some of the students that would be on scholarship or reduced rate. So we reduced what the projection is to 172, and that gives us a revenue of 473. And then further in FY26, reducing tuition to 1,500 and having 158 full-paying students as a total revenue of 237. And then we'd like to have FY27 zero tuition for full-day kindergarten for all students, with 228 students projected that year. And that's the big bump that's coming through that group. I think those are COVID kids based on the timing of that. So we have a large group of kids coming through that we'll have to plan for as they go through the grade levels. So that's the overview in terms of the revenue piece. So if you look at what we have for beginning balances in the revolver and then the disbursements through payroll and expenses. So FY24, we had a beginning balance of $373,000, and we collected the tuition that we talked about on the previous slide. Our direct payroll in FY24, the current fiscal year, is $453,000, and then expenses related to the full-day kindergarten program at $15,000. So we project to have an ending balance at the end of this year at $508,831. So in the next couple of years, what we're going to start to do is remove teachers out of the revolving account and put them in the operating budget, which is why you'll see the numbers on direct payroll go down each year, but those now will go into the actual budget. So that will increase on the operating side, but decrease on the revolving side. Our plan is to keep as many. Right now we're paying 6 teaching assistants out of the revolving account for kindergarten. Our plan is to keep them in the revolving account as long as we can. So the push right now for the next 3 years would be to slowly move the teachers out of revolving and put them into the operating, but keep the teaching assistants in as long as we can. So we'll still have tuition for preschool, and we'll have to take a look at what the tuition rates are for that in the future. But that's kind of a quick overview. And again, I think we'll probably spend a lot more time on this in either February or March that we'll go into real detail so you can take a look at what it looks like. But this was the high level overview to make sure that you understand how it fits into the FY25 budget. So we always take a look at the area per pupil expenditures. And this is a way that the state allows apples to apples comparisons of school districts. So you get a chance to see this is what everyone spends on every cent on education. And you'll see where we are right now. So we're at $18,769, and the average is a little over $20,000 in the state. So just to put it in perspective, if we were spending the average per pupil, that our budget would be 3.3 million more. So we're still under the state average in per pupil expenditure. And if you look at some of our neighbors, we're lower spending than Millis, Foxborough, Norwood, Sherburne, Westwood, Needham, Dedham, Dover. Dover's spending, almost 7,000 more per kid. So that certainly adds up. And I know we've had this conversation before. We're in much better shape than we were years ago. I think years ago we were really, really below a lot of districts, but we've made some gains in that area. But we're still, compared to other districts, a lot lower and below the state average. So I'm going to go through the analysis a bit and go by buildings and an overview of the entire budget. So looking at budget areas, student services, district services, and policy administration, you'll see one of the biggest budget drivers we have here. Student services were increase of 16.2%, or a change of over $500,000. District and policy administration, 3.5 and 5.7. The policy administration is a reclassification of a position that was in student services before that has been reclassified into policy administration. That's a special education position. So that reclassification had it jump up a bit. Let's take a look at student services. You'll see pretty standard costs in terms of our district-wide staff, our support staff, and the out-of-district tuition is something that has really been a budget driver for us. We've done a really good job, and Mary and her team have done an unbelievable job with developing programs in district and keeping kids here. But I think there's just sometimes we cannot provide what a student needs, and we need to find an alternative placement, and that's kind of where we're at right now with some students. So we're looking at out-of-district tuition at $1.2 million for FY25, which is really an increase of about $500,000 for over this year. District services, looking at our district-wide staff, maintenance staff, et cetera. Again, this is some of the stuff that DESE has us. We have the maintenance and summer help in the same classification as our research and development. Our teacher retirement and sick leave buyback, we have money in there. So teachers that are grandfathered into the contract, if they have sick leave, they can purchase some of their sick leave back when they retire. Not all can do that, but teachers that have been here a while can do that. So supplies and equipment, et cetera. It's in general education, transportation is the big driver there. So that's the 1.6 million. So that's our general education, transportation. That also includes the late bus. So the late bus has been in operation for 2 years in Medfield, and we feel like that's a real equity issue for kids and something that we wanted to do for a long time. So we feel it's important to keep that in there. Right now we have a ridership that ranges from 5 to 15 kids, depending. Some days you'll have 14 or 15, some days you'll have 3 kids on there. But it really does provide that equalizer for kids that maybe couldn't stay after for extra help, or couldn't stay after for theater practice, or because they just couldn't do it. Now this allows them to do that. And we're looking at a cost of that for $10,000 a year. We think it's important for those children to have that, so we put that in the budget. We've had 2 years of it now paid through the federal grant ESSER, and now that has made its way into our general education budget. Policy and administration, you'll see what typical in here, our legal fees, central office staff, our memberships to our collaboratives, school committee expenses, district-wide PD, et cetera. And then again, textbooks finds its way in there because that's the way DESE has us organized. So looking at the summary by school, I just want to highlight a couple of things. You'll see that Memorial is at 2.8 increase and Blake is at 2.0, and that's because they have retirements in those two schools. So most of the increases you'll see with it by school are based on staffing, since staffing is 80+% of all of our budgets. So let's go look at it building by building. So Memorial, you'll see the principal's office, the Unit A and Unit B. Again, those increases at Unit A, Unit B are all negotiated in the CBA, and then supplies and materials and utilities, et cetera. Only a 2.8% increase there. Wheelock, very similar. increase is all based pretty much on payroll, 5.5%, or a change of 245,000. Dale Street consistent, really close with 246,000 increase, or 5.2%, and mostly looking at Unit A staff and those increases. Middle school, you'll see the larger increases in the middle and high school in terms of the Unit A staff, because it's just the larger schools and more staff there. But 2% due to retirements. And the high school at 4.5% increase, and you'll see the Unit A staff at 8.5 million. So total, FY24 budget was $41,176,784. The request for FY25, $43,183,772, a change of $2,026,288, or an increase of 4.87. So our target from the town was 4.1. We started off in December at 5.99. So we're obviously a lot closer to the target. I mean, we're still working at it and looking at things we might want to reduce or change, but there are definitely some costs embedded in here that we don't have a lot of control over in terms of our special education services and what we need to do for transportation. So that 4.87 increase, it maintains our current staff and our programs, and it fulfills all our obligations to our collective bargaining agreements with Unit A, Unit B, our administrative assistants, our custodians, and food service. Adds 2 FTE positions, and we added 1.5 FTE in FY24 after annual town meeting due to student needs. So we had students that needed some additional supports, and we were able to add those in after annual town meeting. So that was a 1.5 FTE total. Increases supplies by 35,000, increases transportation by 94. Again, 10 of that 94 is the late bus. Increases out of district tuition by 459. Increases our technology equipment by 27,000. So this is the analysis of the increase. So our teachers, Unit A, steps, lanes, increases in longevity, 994,000. Teaching assistant increase, 43,000. You have a 0.5 assistant athletic director that was paid by ESSER the last 2 years in the budget at 31,000. Additional teaching assistant, memorial, and Wheelock, each one of those at 0.5 at 18,000. And we have an ed team leader at Wheelock. So this is an interesting one. So when Mary did her projections over the years, we didn't think we were going to need this position, because when she did her projections, we were still kind of in the running for the Dale Street School in the campus setting. So that ed team leader was going to work in the Wheelock School and the new Dale Street School, so we wouldn't have to have a different person in there. But Mary we've held on to it for the last couple of years, and Mary was adamant with us that we need to have a 0.5 ed team leader at Wheelock to support, which wouldn't have been there if the building had passed. And then staff not in Unit A or Unit B, so the steps and increases. So those are other unions and non-union folks. The increase is 262,000. And then special education tuitions at 458. The other district services, supplies, we said before, 34, tech and equipment, 27. Again, transportation with 10,000 of that being the late bus. Just another view of the distribution that we always put up a pie chart just to kind of see the distribution over the district. And then there were additional positions that were asked for by the principals, directors, and or department chairs that did not make it in the FY25 budget, at least this version of it. One full-time adjustment counselor at Dale Street, one math specialist at Dale Street, a 0.5 ETLs at Memorial. So we did add the one for Wheelock, but not Memorial. 1.0 behavior therapist at Memorial, 1.0 building sub at Blake, 0.2 math specialist at Blake, and that's just bringing someone who's 0.8 to full-time. 0.4 wellness teacher at the high school. We reduced that a couple of budgets ago and haven't replaced that. And then a 0.5 administrative assistant in the district. When I first got to Medfield, there was a full-time secretary in the curriculum / instruction office, and we don't have anyone in there right now. So although it didn't make it in this budget, we'd really like to get someone in there part-time to help out with the work that Christine does. So those are not in this version of the budget. And then capital expenses. So the things that we've done in FY24, at Blake, we did the auditorium renovation, $125,000 out of capital. We also got support from MCP on that, which was really awesome. A gymnasium roof replacement at the high school. That roof has been leaking forever. We finally got that done over the summer. Asbestos flooring and abatement and replacement at Dale Street. The fire alarm panel had some issues here at the high school, and the chief asked us to make sure that we had that fixed over the summer. So we did that. So that was additional $25,000. And then ceiling tile replacement and lighting upgrade at Dale Street. So looking at FY25, what we're trying to do is we had the tennis court repairs at the high school, excuse me, on the FY24, but they were backed up and they couldn't get that done, the company that does that. We have to look at boiler replacement at Blake. Fortunately, that's going to be paid for in portion by the Green Communities Grant. Wheelock to replace the pneumatic temp controls, also being paid somewhat with the Green Communities Grant. Resurfacing of the parking lots here at the high school and the middle school, they haven't been done in a long, long time. So we need to kind of get that done. They're looking ragged and starting to break down. And then again, more Dale Street stuff with the ceiling tiles, the carpet, and asbestos abatement that we have. We have that ongoing every single year in capital because it needs to be done. So we don't know when or if we'll ever get new buildings. We want to make sure that we can continue to make that a good environment for our kids and for our teachers. So that's where we are with capital. Going forward with our budget, we have 4 additional school committee meetings to have conversations about this and make changes. You'll see February, 2 in March, and 1 in April. The warrant committee will be meeting with us in February. And Ed's here tonight, and he thinks it might be the 13th. We got to check our schedules for that. And then town meeting the final budget on May 6th. And when we get to that number, it's never an official budget until it's voted at town meeting. So I'm happy to answer any questions from the committee, and then certainly open it up for the community as well.
Thank you. Thank you as well. I know it's a lot of work. And over there. I hear your questions. You know.
So just the most recent, you just said something about the school parking lots resurfacing?
Yes.
I know they're kind of tough out there. Would we do that before we did the solar? Because wouldn't that be affected with like the canopies and stuff? Or should...
So we just got a report, was it yesterday, Michael, on the solar? Yesterday on the solar for the high school. So we're looking at doing solar at Blake right now and then at Memorial. We cannot do the solar project at Blake anymore by the parking lots.
Just on the roof?
Just the one on the roof because the Rose, I'm going to say, what is it? Rose Bay project. Yeah, so the Rose Bay project is happening apparently. And then that actually goes into our parking lot area, so we're not going to be able to do that. So we have to kind of figure that all out too, because what they sent us, it looks like some of our parking lot and our driveway is in their land, on their land. So we have to kind of figure that out too. But that, yeah, so we wouldn't do anything where we have to dig for that, Will. To answer your question, we wouldn't resurface that yet.
So while we're talking about solar, because I was curious, looking at kind of like the electricity and the utilities, when we're able to get solar, what are we anticipating, like percentage or actual numbers in regards to the decrease that we'll see for some of these bills?
So the way it's structured is that
Michael, you might want to go to over there just to have a microphone.
I don't have the contract on me,
Okay.
but the way it's structured is that there's a set amount that you're paying for kilowatts that you're going to be locked into for a period of time.
Right.
That cost is going to be slightly more than what we're currently paying. So the savings is within that 20-year span, not immediately within that
okay.
1 year.
Okay. So the cost that we'll see is going to be over time, but won't really
Correct.
affect any of the budgets over the next like 2, 3, 4
Correct.
years.
We're going to take
Okay.
that into consideration.
Okay.
You'll also notice there's been reductions in electricity, in utilities. Michael really went through and looked at some of our historical usage and was able to reduce some of the budget, which is great. As long as the weather cooperates.
Correct.
I have, if you're all thinking of them, some of my questions are more, I'll call them nit type just to make sure, and then a couple are a little more meaty. Early, you just said, I want to make sure I understand it. You mentioned the assumption is the circuit breaker at 75%.
Right.
And then you referenced 90%.
So MASS is lobbying the state right now for 90%. I'm sure MASC will be doing the same. But that we're assuming it's going to be 75 because that's what the governor had in her budget yesterday was 75. I just know that they're lobbying hard for 90%, just like they're also lobbying hard for 125 per student increase instead of a 30. So if they get more, then that'd be helpful for us, but we're not counting on it.
So that may be an incremental roughly 140K. Is that, that would be 20% of the 730.
Yeah, we're not counting on it. I'm just saying they're lobbying. That's all. Yeah.
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 No.
It's a formula-fed system, so we have to look at individual students on IEPs, and they take their cost, back out what they call a set foundation budget that they set for that tuition, and then take 90% on top of that.
Michael, can you just speak in the microphone? I know people want to hear because I can't hear you either.
So
Thank you.
when it comes to circuit breaker, and Mary does all of it, what happens is they don't do it on a specific total. They do it on an individual basis depending on a child's IEP. So Mary has to take in consideration all the costs that are associated with that child. They back out what they have as a base tuition, which I think it's going to be 57.2. I think I'm not 100% sure. You back that out, and then they take 90% of what that total is for that individual child, and then so you have to do that for all students, and then you get a total.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And if nothing else, the thought is you're being conservative on the
Right. Absolutely.
And I forget. Is circuit breaker what you receive it and then you actually apply it the following year?
The following year.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Can I jump in, Tim? Because
Yes, yeah, definitely. This was letting you
breakers.
kind of digest and sort of.
So, right, it looks like for the circuit breaker, the kids that we need to send, right, that we can't educate in our system, like it's 20 this year, and then you're projecting going down to 18 for next year. I guess, that's an estimate based on who is already in the district, but how
Right.
are we planning for kids who may move in that we're not accounting for? Do we have like an excess fund, or are we?
So we typically have a carryover with circuit breaker,
Okay.
just for that particular case if something happens. Michael really likes to carry over a lot. He really, we talk about it all the time. He wants to have a reserve so that if that does happen where someone moves in, or if there's someone that's not on the radar that needs additional services that percolates up, then we'll have the funds to provide the services the child needs. So yeah, we definitely carry over and have, you can carry over circuit breaker 1 year.
Yeah.
You can't do it in perpetuity. It's 1 year, that's it. If you have a circuit breaker for FY25, you can carry it over the next year, but you have to spend all that
The next
or
year?
you'll lose it.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I just want
we
to add.
spend that first.
So I just want to add, those 20 kids are actually 20 kids from last year that we get. So we're a year behind in circuit breaker.
Okay. Yes.
So the
that makes-
18 is actually this year's numbers.
This current year.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, that helps. Thank you.
You look at the history, you'll see, we look at the top of that page,
It's
at
gone
one
back.
point we had 35.
Right.
Yeah, so we had a lot of students out, so we've really brought that down a lot. I mean, it ebbs and flows, but there was a time where it was in the 30s.
Yeah, I saw
lot.
that.
And this is somewhat related, so I'll stay there. But your student services increase is the bigger, one of the larger ones. And you're saying, I think it shows 1.2 is the out of district tuition. Is there any trends that would say, hey, there's a certain service that if we offered, we may be, better equipped to keep them in the district?
Yeah, I mean, Mary does a great job with that. I think whenever we start to see something where we have students, multiple students that need similar services, one of the things, and again, I don't want to harp on this, but one of the things that makes it difficult from Mary's perspective and for kids' perspective is our structure at elementary school. So it's expensive to start a program at every single school if you need a particular program, which is why we really wanted to have that campus setting at Wheelock so that we could develop a program there and you could have that wide swath of grades of kids actually being in there because you're on the same campus. So that makes it difficult to develop programs. You'll notice most of the programs we developed have been for older kids because at the middle school or high school, it's a lot easier to do it because you're at that one particular place. So I think, the structures are structure. It is what it is. But I think it doesn't lend itself sometimes to develop elementary programs based on kids being in 3 different schools. But yes, to answer your question, Tim, absolutely.
It's an interesting one because you put your, tonight it's more about our finance hat and our budget hat and hey, that savings. The other side is it's not a finance. Nobody, the families and the kids don't want to go out either.
No,
right. So
no.
it's just.
So I would say a good example of that is when we had our extended program beyond 18, and we had students that were going to our collaborative, and then Mary had looked at that whole program and decided to develop it in-house. So now we have one in-house, and we tuition students from other districts into our programs. That's a good example of how we've done that in the past.
And Tim, the actual cost is the 1.2 plus the circuit breaker, which is that 700,000.
Okay. No, it's just an interesting to see it, and it's comforting to know that we're constantly looking at
Oh, for
where
sure.
the trends, themes. Is it certain school or age group, and where possible. Sometimes applying, we're finding that additional FTE. It may look in the budget as an additional head, and it's applied to those services. Makes sense. And I my questions, they were kind of mixed. Some were just more almost operating, or as I say, nits. One was, and this is probably in the budget book, but for Tri-County and Aggie, that's not part of this budget, but it is part of the town.
The town's budget.
Correct.
Well, the Norfolk Aggie part of it's in our budget.
It is, but we fight that every year because
Correct.
it's really not our role to pay that. But
So-
it does find its way in our budget.
So then that just shows up as a line item that we will see in the town meeting. Where does it typically show up?
It's on the line by line item budget you have, the one that's online, the one you have, yeah, it's on there.
Even though
It's at
part
it's at the end.
okay, even
Yeah.
though it's part of it. And the other one, and actually this is related, and I'll again circle it back to the other members of the committee. The first, you've spoken one-on-one to me, but I think it was worth sharing. Like the drivers behind the full day kindergarten for all. Like just that kind of what was behind that is that evolved because that's also the budget numbers go up.
Right.
And again, when you put that hat on, you might say, "Hey, why are you doing it?" And then there's a whole other school of thought around it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think first of all, what we've seen since we've implemented full day kindergarten is the overwhelming majority of parents want it. But what we started seeing, and Missy can attest to this, is that we started to have students who could really benefit from full day kindergarten, but it was cost prohibitive for their families. And we've seen it for more than a couple of years now. And we have, we're starting to get Title I again. We have changing demographics in our community, whether people want to admit it or not, we are. And I think that is something that was the driving force behind that, where you have students that need that additional instruction. They may not have gotten a quality preschool experience, so that, it puts them behind the 8 ball right there. And then we wanted to make sure they had the opportunity to be in full day kindergarten like every other kid in Medfield. So that's the thinking behind it. We actually worked with the Medfield Foundation over the summer this year to get scholarship money so that students in half day could attend full day. So we don't have any half day program per se now. Everyone's in a full day classroom right now. And Medfield Foundation supported those families that needed that. So we feel like over the next 2 years, we're going to transition into a place where every kid in Medfield can go to full day kindergarten, not pay tuition, have the same opportunity. So that's kind of the thinking behind why we did what we did, and while we're presenting what we're presenting.
Yeah, no, I think it helped me. It's great to see it as that goes. And one was somewhat confusing, but you talk a little bit about the teachers funded by the revolving fund. When we look at the FTE numbers, do they roll up?
So the FTE numbers in the operating budget,
Yes.
like you'll see one particular teacher in there that is listed as 0.7, but she's a full-time teacher because she was fully in the revolving account. Now 0.7 of her is in the operating, and only 0.3 of her is in the revolving account. So we're transitioning people from revolving into the operating budget. So you're going to see every year more. So it's one FTE right now this year, but there'll be two. Was it two more, Michael, next year, or three more? Three more next year from the kindergarten, and then we're going to keep the 6 teaching assistants in the revolving account as long as we can afford to do that.
I know you said we're going to get a deeper dive
We
on
will.
the FDK. I did have one quick question though, because we see right now that there's positions that were asked that are not going to make this year's budget, and I guess I would be surprised if the need went away for any of these positions. So some
Well,
of
the
them
needs
might,
for every single one of them is still there.
correct.
Yeah.
And there probably will be a need next year as well for some of these same type of things.
You guys feel free to add them in there. Your budget after tonight, so you add what you want.
My question is, will adding the kindergarten teachers into the operating budget push some of these aside? Like, will those?
Could.
Okay.
You could. I mean, you gotta make a value judgment, right? What's more important at this point? And I
Yeah.
think that if you're looking at, you fund what you value, and we feel like full day kindergarten is the most important thing out of some, instead of some of those other ones. You have to make those decisions. But you can certainly add them if you like. We'll be happy to have them.
And Michelle, can you just clarify that?
Right. So we're talking about right now some of the kindergarten teachers are being paid out of the revolver account, but we're going to be taking them from the revolver account, and they're going to be paid from the operating budget. But when you stick a teacher in the operating budget, these asks right here are what's not making the operating budget, right? So my question was, when we bring them in, this need isn't going to go away. So how does that? Then we just end up with competing priorities, I guess. I'm just clarifying that that's what we'll end up with.
Yeah, I was kind of going. I was trying to better understand that, but it makes sense. And yeah, I thought it was pretty creative what we did this year with the Medfield Foundation. Right.
It was very generous of Medfield
Yeah,
Foundation.
you'd
They were
wonder
great
if
to work
that's-
with. And Medfield Outreach, by the way, too. They were a big help with us with that too.
But again, that invest in that, and it also helps us. It's all the way through K through 12,
Right.
right? Like that. That's definitely the logic.
And talking about one of the things that wasn't asked for was the 1.0 building sub at Blake. Do we have building subs at our other schools?
No.
We don't have that model, right? Like,
So we do at some. Yeah, we do at some. So the high school had the model forever. The high school had it, what do you think, Robert, for over 20 years. So the high school always had that. And the gentleman that was the building sub retired finally. He was retired before, came back, and he retired again.
yeah.
So we've actually had a hard time filling that position. We can't seem to get someone that wants to do that. So there are building subs. Wheelock has one. Forget who has it.
They have double roles.
We've jumped
Yeah.
around on a little bit, but
Well, I asked a little bit because when I went through the line item budget, is that what that's called? There's like, I don't know, 22 items that were the 23 actual budget was very high. And I think just looking at some of them, like a lot of it was our sub stuff, if I'm interpreting this right. But it was like we had budgeted for like $70,000 just looking at a couple. There's more there, but I just have like 4 that were they stood out to me because they were very high in our 2023
maternity
actual.
leaves.
What's that?
Maternity leaves.
That's what a lot of them is. So it's
Yeah.
just something we can't predict, right? Because it's like we spent $230 just on like 4 line items I'm looking at where we had budgeted 70. That's what that is.
Maternity leaves.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we have to, when Michael classifies them, he has to classify short-term substitutes, professional development substitutes, long-term. So that's all.
Yeah, that's the ST here. So that's a couple that I'm looking at. There's just obviously nothing we can really do about that, right?
No, we get surprised with that all the time.
Yeah.
got an email yesterday about it. So yeah, yeah.
It's just, I like the idea of like a building sub, right? Because we have people, someone you know and all that, but like our substitute budget gets blown blown out of the water.
And we deal with paternity leaves also.
Yeah, that's
Sure.
that's new. Yes, that's
Yeah.
the paternity leaves are new. So yeah.
My other like general question, I don't know if it's too general where I might have to sit down with you, Jeff, or Michael, is like of all the stuff I found, 24 items or whatever that 24 items that were we budgeted a lot more than we have, so it might be a more nuanced conversation. But just like I want to ask generally for things where like we're budgeting. And I understand we only have one actual here because we're working through 24, so that's a little harder. But we have things that are budgeted for 40, 45,000, 40,000 this year, 45 next, and we only spent 12 last year. There's actually two like that. There's another where it's like 9 or 10,000. We spent 4,000, or even for like textbooks, we spent $300. So I get it's probably too broad of a question, but why do we opt not to like reel those things in, I guess? I don't know. I hope that what I'm trying to say makes some sense.
No, it does.
but
Sometimes they're
there's so many
contractual.
things.
So sometimes they're contractual. So if they're related to professional development or conference and travel in a certain area, they're contractual and say a principal's contract or
Yeah.
whatever.
So I just
Like the 42,000 for the teachers and their course reimbursement, that mostly gets used, but that's contractual.
Sure.
But Michael, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, so there's items in there that are in the certain union contracts that are a dollar amount that we have to budget for.
okay.
And correct, there's years that it's used, there's years that it's not used. But there's also the principals have the discretion. So if, for instance, the textbook line item looks like the actual is lower, right? You'll check their supply line item, that should be higher, because sometimes they'll go over in one line and under in another line, depending on what they need for that school or that period of time. So they might have budget, let's say, $2,000 for textbooks, but something happened that they have to use some of that textbook money into supplies. So they as long as they don't go over within their categories,
Yeah.
they can go over within those lines.
Okay. So that might be some of it too. Some of the stuff I don't know exactly where it would match up. Okay. So yeah, leadership discretion and
Yeah, and-
contractual stuff might be.
Yeah, we can go through all that too.
And well, we can-
Yeah,
Just sit down and
I
go
will. I just
Yeah.
didn't catch you guys in the last couple of days when I was looking at this. Didn't try to.
We're hard to catch.
Yeah. Right.
I think it's typically is the question I ask, or somebody asked, but my head gravitates towards the additional positions not recommended, right? And my assumption is we're being pretty creative to try to keep that list as small as possible, right? Like, how can we run more efficiently? Without doing the exact math, though, it seems like more of them are towards the SEL related, adjustment counselors, things. So that's the only area, like that's one area that I always say, hey, that can hurt. That can really hurt us for a long time, or hurt, our kids. So I guess that's where kind of my head goes. I also just think, Dr. Marsden, as you go through this and you bring this forward, how do you feel? How does the team, to your right, feel like it, compared to other years? Do we feel pretty good? Do we like, man, this was a little harder than years past? I know that might be a tough question it's not as quantitative as always, but just generally speaking,
Well, I
we,
think
we take ownership of it,
right.
and then we're going to be trying to work to fill the gaps. So I just wanted to kind of get a sense of what we're.
Well, I think one of the things that we found easier this year is that we were given guardrails by the warrant committee on where to be, right? So that had never happened for us before. So I think that was really helpful for us to understand and have a target where you want to be. And when we started in December and we had all the positions and everything that was requested, and we came out at 599, then we could take a look at it and see if we got to get close to that target. We got to get closer. And then more information came in and got us close. So in that regard, I think it was a better process knowing what the expectations were around that. I think it's difficult because everyone sitting to the right here wants those positions for their building. And I think that becomes really difficult to again, you're making value judgments on what position you need and what position you don't. And I think everyone there made a really good case for every position that they've asked for. They had individual meetings with us and advocated for their buildings or their department. And I think at some point we have to make a decision on what goes in and what doesn't. I don't think there's any nice to haves in there. I think those are all really good positions that are needed.
Yeah.
But we just went through and made those decisions.
No, it's interesting that a lot of them are adjustment type or math.
Yeah, for sure.
Just the hardcore. I know I've asked a bunch. I want to appreciate the extra time. If there's other, I think us as a committee, we can continue to ask. I don't know if it would be a good time to open it up to the general, anyone else in here. If there's questions, I think the process is approach the mic, share your name and street and what your question may be. And do we have anyone on Zoom?
There's a couple people on Zoom. So if you're on Zoom and you want to ask a question, you can raise your Zoom hand. We ask that you just turn your camera on when you're brought over to ask your question.
I don't know if we do the Jeopardy music now.
Nobody's raising their hand.
Okay. I'm just checking my notes. Okay, I was just also, I had a few questions, I was checking. So if there's no comments or no questions from the public, is everyone else okay?
There's nobody on Zoom right now that wants to ask.
Yeah, I was saying either or.
Chris Mott, 71st Street. Sorry about that. I was trying to be respectful of the Zoom folks who may want to. Thanks for tonight. I appreciate this. And I just want to do a little bit of a disclaimer. I just want to make sure that people realize that my questions really are geared toward a deep desire to make sure that we are all aware of ways that we can improve as a district so that we can all work together as a team. We cannot tackle challenges or issues if we don't really know the ones that exist. So I just want to make that as a progress. And that just goes to just really asking about, you are sitting there as a school committee with budget books in front of you, the warrant committees going to be getting detailed information. Can we make all of that available to the public on the website so that people can actually dig deeper if they want to into the numbers instead of just seeing the random line item document? So that's one question we have.
I just want to ask, random, it's the actual line item budget, so it's not random. I'm just not clear about that.
I'm saying random because compared to other districts that I've seen when they put their budget information out, they do not put out a laundry list of just line items.
It's not a laundry list, that is the actual budget.
I understand that there.
Okay.
There's a lot of context, a lot of additional information.
That's what this is.
And that is not on the website.
It will be tomorrow.
But it should have been there before tonight.
That's your opinion. It will be tomorrow.
I'm just saying. Communication, transparency actually helps people work together.
Thank you.
So my question is, I have a few different questions specifically. So why were the fiscal year 23 actual expenses for school committee so much higher than budgeted, especially the other expenses and comps and travel? It's a pretty big jump.
Are you going
What was the first part, Chris?
The fiscal year 23 actual expenses for school committee were so much higher than budgeted. And the other expenses, it's line,
Do you know what line?
it's line 1 and 2.
Line 1 and 2. So actual was 27 in FY '23, and the budget was 14.
We're so bad. Zoom in.
I have to look it up. I don't know. Do you know, Michael?
Yeah, those were some of the initiatives that we had for last year. I can't I have to pull the invoices, but those were some of the initiatives that the school committee had for last year.
I mean, it's double the previous year, so it would be helpful to know why it increased so much.
Yeah, we can look into it
Yeah, we'll
on
look
on there. We haven't gone in there. I think we're going through a pretty significant budget overarching, right? So you can always. I would like to better understand double of last year.
Well, it's just double what the budget was, so I don't know if it's double what we spent in FY '22, but it's double what the FY '23 budget was.
And also it's basically the same question for the central office expenses. It jumped from $20,000 to more than $49,000 in FY '23. It helps to have an explanation as to why that was the case. A larger overarching question has to do about kindergarten enrollment. So the questions we don't really have the registration won't happen for at least another few weeks. That won't start, right? Based on looking at the schedule on the website. We won't really know what those kindergarten numbers are until probably at least March. So my question is, if we've watched how our projections of that enrollment, kindergarten enrollment, have not been realized in the past. So my question is, what happens to the allocations that are put aside now for kindergarten? For this belief that kindergarten enrollment is going to grow, what happens if it doesn't? What happens to the dollars not allocated to that if it doesn't? If the enrollment
For FY '25 or beyond.
for FY '25?
So if we don't hit that target number for FY '25, what happens?
Yes.
I think that Missy has a pretty good idea of what those numbers are based on what she has for data, so I think we're pretty comfortable with those. But if not, we'd have to maybe look at adjusting what the transition plan might be if it's severely lower. I don't know, we'd have to look at that.
I'm curious what kind of data is available to supplement the projections that we're getting from our external, from NASDAQ.
Missy, what do you use for other data for kindergarten? Expectations for kindergarten coming in?
We obviously use census data for live births, and then we do pre-registration, so we get a better idea of people.
Missy, if you don't mind, maybe the mic, just so if anybody's listening, they can hear, and even so I can hear as well.
So we use our census data, our live birth data, and then we use our pre-registration data that is after the kindergarten information night, which will be held next Tuesday. So we try to capture the kiddos who might not have been on our census data to give us a better idea.
Historically, just to follow on, I'm not trying to interrupt the questions. It's just historically, as we project kindergarten, and versus what actually happens, are we usually, how close are we typically, the plus or minus?
I would say it depends on the year, but
Depends on the year.
we've been really close. But
Unless people decide to hold their kids back, which happens. We can't control that.
Okay. And sorry, go ahead with the other questions. Chris.
Yeah, I get that.
Thanks, Misty.
Part of the question about kindergarten is what is the trending, what's the trending in terms of percentage of students being held back from kindergarten? Because I know that's been a trend in the state that's affected a lot of kindergarten planning.
Yeah, there are some years that it again depends on the year. We have some years it's under 10 and some years it's 15 or 20. So it all depends.
The other quick two things that I just want to mention is, I love the concept of the late bus. I think it's fantastic to help provide transportation for students who just cannot get home and cannot stay after school. However, when you consider the fact that 85 to 90% of the bus is empty on any given day, I'm just wondering if there, other than working through the bus contract, the firm that we have, is there another way to provide that transportation that's less expensive? And it's also more environmentally friendly, because when you have a 70-seat bus that's sitting there and it's running every single day and it's 85 to 90% empty, it's really not a good use of environmental. It's an environmental issue, but it's not a good use of that vehicle. So is there an ability to get a smaller bus? Is there an ability to use the Warrior van? Is there another creative way to give those children, those students transportation
Well, we do have access to a smaller bus, but I don't know if we have access to it after school. We have it during the day. So any of the runs that are on Elm Street in that area, we don't put a large bus up there because of the bridge and that turn that if you're going towards Walpole past Wheelock. So we have a smaller bus that does that route. Warrior Van is used a lot with sports teams. We've actually have used the senior center vans before. That's been really helpful, but they use those as well. Park and Rec has many vans, but they're using those all the time. They can't have a daily schedule. So it's probably something we could look at, Chris, but I don't, you know.
I just want to add, you have to take in consideration, once you have a specific school bus, because that's what it would be considered, that you have to have 2 inspections a year. Your insurance, it goes up. You have to have the cost for a driver, benefits for that driver. And if you add all that up, it would be more than $10,000 a year.
I think that when I think back to other previous school committee conversations about bus fees, I think the thing that concerns me a little bit is that the equity issue is not brought up as the reason for doing after-school bus. The reason that it was brought up was so the bus, so it would be easier politically to get the bus fees passed. So I just.
Who has ever said that?
Yeah, who said that?
Said that at the school.
I have never said that. I've never, ever said that. I'm sure you will, but I've never said that.
But I mean, just
That's
one second.
outrageous.
I
Outrageous.
love what you're at. The original question makes a lot of sense to me, right? Like, I also do think what Michael's saying is, unfortunately, it's to make sure we can do it reliably with the late school. I'm afraid we have to negotiate that as part of our bus contracts.
Correct.
What I would wonder is, we can't be the only school that is doing this with similar results, and it would make a lot of sense that they say, hey, they have some smaller buses or things like that to manage this. I think where we started is a great place to start, and I'm not sure where we're going with what was just brought up. I was confused by that, which is justification for bus fees, and I'm not sure if that seems like it's just not necessarily one in the same. That may be a different topic, and maybe we bring it up as a separate topic.
And then the last thing I just wanted to see was that overall with the budget, we just had Christine just did an amazing presentation, 2 presentations on MCAS results. Really wonderful presentations.
Thank you.
They were fantastic. And she's been so responsive to that, answering questions, and especially around literacy. When you see all the low coverage about what's going on with low quality or early reading, the curriculum in the early grades. And Medfield was named as one of those districts that has considered to have low quality early reading curriculum. However, we are addressing it because I saw the wonderful report that was done last year about all the things that are going to change. What I don't see though is any kind of message in this presentation or at a school committee meeting that ties the budget to the things that we are going to work on to improve the things, to improve the gaps, whether it comes out of MCAS results or other assessments. I mean, our teachers are amazing. They do amazing work, and they deserve to have the support of our school committee and a presentation that says, we're going to tie the budget dollars to the gaps, the academic gaps that we see, whether it's in literacy, whether it's in other areas. I mean, again, that presentation was wonderful that Christine did. This is a budget question. This is a curriculum question. This is a budget question. And I think the community deserves, as other citizens have said in Lexington and other districts at their school committee budget meetings, where are we tying the budget to these changes that need to be made to close academic gaps? That's missing from this tonight.
Appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I would comment, because we don't too frequently have the forums like this. That's why we have a public forum. I think we're progressing in areas around setting and establishing clear goals, whether it's at the administration or school committee level, beginning to try to measure and share and report in a regular way. we have had some conversations around too, that I you know, like, how much do we tie the academic, success, or, however you want to call it, to the budget? And then how much do you tie the other elements that go in? We're, I think you'll see with the strategic plan, we're starting to put out a kind of a scorecard, which is how are we measuring against that? And I've looked at that as an evolving process. I always think of it as if we do it really rushed, it may not be done right. So I appreciate it. I think it's good. It's a fair comment. I think iron sharpens iron. Like, we'd like to see a little more, how can I put dollars to, results and grades? I think we are moving in that direction, continuing to move, maybe not at the pace you want. And for that, we're going to continue to try. But we are, we're trying to continue to bring that qualitative, more of that qualitative elements to that. But I don't think we've used a formula historically that says this dollar equates to, this MCAS result. And I know you're not asking for that, but
That's not what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is that you have a Boston Globe major media outlet that's been writing for quite some time now, weeks upon weeks, about literacy histories in all the schools. Medfield has been named as a school that had low quality curriculum for early literacy. We have this amazing report that Christine led and her team led on all the things that we plan to do to address our literacy gaps. It's great. I mean, I pulled out things, curriculum changes, teacher professional development, introduction of a structured phonics-based spelling program, expansion of libraries with high-quality texts. I'm guessing that those specific recommendations that were in that report are going to cost money. And it would be really wonderful as people are reading these major media articles in the Boston Globe, and they're wondering, well, what's going on in Medfield? From a budgeting process, it's so important to be able to tell the community that we recognize that these are problems or weaknesses or things that we need to improve. And here in this year's budget, or the budget for FY25, here are some specific ways that we're going to be addressing them. Simple. It's just simple. It's a great way to educate the community, and it's a great way to address potential gaps. And it helps everybody work together. But we don't talk about this. I haven't even, that report, that wonderful report that these issues haven't even been discussed as school committee. How is that okay?
thank you for your comments.
Kristen Simonini, 431 Main Street. Full disclosure, former member of the school committee for a previous period of time. But during that time, I did spend at least 7 months, a morning of my week, experiencing review of all of our bills and invoices and budgetary line items. So I saw quite intimately where all of these dollars go, which is not a perspective that a lot of other citizens in the community really get to see and share. And it's blood from a stone. I was often shocked when I saw the costs of everything, the transportation, the communications, the utilities, and you name it. Was always shocked at those things, but also saw the due diligence that went into ensuring that we had the right vendors and had done as well as we could to find the lowest cost options without shortchanging our children and our staff. But as a taxpayer in Medfield and as a parent of an active student in the school who can see every single day the quality of the education that my child and our children are getting, and the amazing things that the staff and the teams in the school are doing. I just want to say that I know it is a yeoman's effort, and it's hard. It's hard in a town like Medfield. I mean, we pay a lot, guys, and we all do, and you're all taxpayers too, but but I see, no waste, I don't see thoughtless work, I see very thoughtful expenses, and I appreciated the information as was shared tonight. I think others will definitely benefit from reviewing that as well and understanding where the deltas are and the differences year over year. I think it is a little bit shameful that this is the kind of attendance we get at these types of meetings. That's always been hard to swallow. But I just want to say, as a taxpayer and as a parent, I appreciate this, really thoughtful. I think many of the questions I had were definitely answered. I think you guys struck on some things too. I know it doesn't end tonight, but just my thanks.
Okay. Thanks for your comments.
Thanks.
And your service. Any other comments from the public? Anyone else on Zoom? How does this group feel about, are we prepared to vote?
We have to close the meeting.
I know that.
Yeah.
I'm getting with the program.
Okay.
Takes a little. I just before closing out the meeting, that's what I say. Is there any other, based on the comments we've heard, any other questions that come up? Okay. So, one, Dr. Marston, again, thank you to you, thank you to Michael and your teams. I know it's a great deal of work. Thank you for those who are here, and thank you for your comments. I'm sincere. The expression "iron sharpens iron." We listen. We try to address and get better, which I think will continue as best we can. With that, I think we can probably close out the public hearing. Do we take a nomination?
A motion.
A motion to close that out.
I'd like to make a motion to close the FY25 public budget hearing.
I hear a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So we'll close it out. Then okay, and then it's between, I guess, I'll say it, and is there a motion to accept the FY25 budget as was presented in the materials?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, I think it's 4 ayes. Okay, thanks very much. But wait, there's more. Not saying that, thank you very much before we open that up.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thanks, guys.
I've been informed the presentation is already posted online, so just in case you guys want to.
Okay.
In case anyone has a question on that.
Presentations online.
Yes.
And so now I'd like to open up our regular scheduled school committee meeting with other items on the agenda. So we'll open it up with the roll call. Tim Knight here.
Michelle Kirkby here.
Will Horn here.
Diana Frischella here.
Okay, thank you. And again, we'll start with public input. Members of the public will be welcome to comment during the public input through Zoom. If you're doing it on Zoom, please raise your Zoom hand. And whether you're on Zoom or in the room, share your name and address. If you're on Zoom, we ask that you keep your camera on. And in either case, that you follow school committee policy for public input, including speaking for no more than 3 minutes and only on topics under the purview of the school committee. So with that, is there any public input, either on Zoom or in the room?
Chris Potts at First Street. Just a quick note that recommendation for the calendar for next year for school committee to ensure that MCAS results are covered earlier in the school year, in the fall, closer to when the results are actually released to the district. And looking at all the districts, the 12 districts that we compare ourselves to with MCAS, 3 had presentations in September. 6 had presentations in October, 3 had presentations in November, none of them had presentations in December and January on the previous year results. So I'm just asking for school committee to consider and please plan on presenting those results results.
Thank you for your input. Any other comments?
No hands are raised on mine.
Okay. So items on the consent agenda, approval of the regular meeting minutes from January 8th, 2024, and donations, and that's, my only thing is, we're not as light, it's not as,
I know, it's darker here.
can you read it? I just don't want to get them wrong.
Yeah,
If you
absolutely.
don't mind.
Sure.
If your eyes are any
Donations, $2,340.65 from Grennan Barrett to be deposited in the Blake Middle School gift account, and $2,789.49 from Shutterfly to be deposited in the Wheelock gift account.
Okay. I always ask, I think I know the answers. Anything we want to call out for the consent agenda? No, okay. Do we have a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay, Michelle.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. New business, I think, Dr. Marston, were you going to speak to that, to the Madeline Grant Scholarship Award recipient?
Yes, so every January, we get the grades for the students that were recognized for the Madeline Grant Scholarship Award, and the grades are in your packet. They're not public because it's private for the students, but you get to see what they are. I ask that you approve the release of funds for the Madeline L. Grant Scholarship in the amount of $3,000 for each of Medfield High School graduates, Mary Catherine Benson and Audrey Callahan. I ask that you approve as presented.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Yes.
Please, aye.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The town will release that money to them. Thank you.
Any other items since posting on January 22nd?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Strategic plan update. And I think Dr. Marston, you're going to lead that.
I am, yes. So in your materials, as we decided in September that we were going to have a check-in in January and another check-in at the end of the year, after we try to plan for what the district is going to focus on for the entire year in that September meeting. So I put together just an update on various. Would you like me to go through the whole thing, or how would you like me to do it? It's 6 pages, so I can.
Yeah,
I can go. It's no big deal. I can go through it. I just want to make sure you want me to go through the whole thing.
yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, so this is just our progress update and where we are. We started off with our priority 1, the safety, belonging, well-being. 1.1, evaluate current practices to support student and staff well-being. That was our key action, and we're looking at gathering data, utilizing Panorama. Students in grades 6 through 12, as well as staff and families, will be participating in a Panorama SEL survey in this February. It might stretch into March, depending on Panorama's schedule, but we're scheduled to do it the week after vacation. Promoting a sense of belonging, cultural response, and professional development. On January 11th, 2024, the entire leadership team and department chairs had a professional development session with Dr. Stephanie Pinder-Maker and Dr. Lauren Wadsworth, and focused on culturally responsive practices responding to identity-related aggressions, sometimes called microaggressions. The entire secondary staff, 6 through 12, also met with them on January 23rd for their release day session, and really good feedback on that. Move toward full-day kindergarten for all as a component of our FY25 budget. We will share the 3-year implementation plan that will provide a full-day kindergarten for all students without charging tuition. Incorporation of student voice in grades 6 through 12. Advisory has provided many opportunities for students to give feedback on topics such as cell phones at the high school and homework at Blake Middle School. Medfield High School Principal Robert Parger has been meeting with grade 9 students to gather information on transition to Medfield High School. In addition, Medfield High School has a new student advisory with our food service director to provide input and feedback on food choices. Blake has also been doing end-of-term reflections after they receive the report card, as well as Nat always doing a question of the week for the students, for them to reflect on. Align our DEI efforts, review task force model in faculty, staff representatives each school. We are in discussion of the best ways to merge the DEI task force and the SEL task force. More information will be forthcoming on that. Curriculum review is ongoing. The Medfield Public Schools developed a curriculum review tool and is utilized by staff. Prior to the adoption of any curriculum, this tool allows staff to assess any bias in any curriculum that we purchase or use. Examine school safety, 1.4, reinstate SRO position to collaborate with Medfield Police Department. The Medfield Police Department has reinstated the school resource officer position for this school year. The Medfield Police Department schedule permits the SRO to be on site on most school days, and they have a schedule that an on and off schedule, and so sometimes the SRO cannot be on site. When the SRO is not on site, the chief makes sure that a police officer is around and makes rounds in the school area. School committee policy for cameras. School committee is currently reviewing all of our district policies. So that is definitely one that we have to add to our policy subcommittee meetings. Additional school safety professional development. The Medfield Police and Mass State Police conducted school safety professional development on October 31st for all staff. The state police presentation reviewed the most up-to-date procedures and protocols for school safety. Town Safety Committee, the Medfield Fire Chief, Medfield Police Chief, and Medfield Deputy Police Chief, and I have met 3 times this school year. We reviewed and updated procedures around school safety topics, and we are planning to meet each month to go over any issues or topics that we want to discuss. Review school start times, establish a committee and process and timeline. The invitation for committee members has been sent, and the committee is about to be formed, and a kickoff meeting is scheduled for the next few weeks. I think I put in your narrative that we're looking the first week in February for that. Possible recommendation for June of 2024, and that will be determined by the committee as they go through the process. With community engagement and communication, develop a comprehensive internal and external communication plan. Review practices within each building. We are currently in the process of working with a communications consultant to review current practices, as well as conducting focus groups with staff and parents. Complete a comprehensive plan. This is scheduled to be completed by April. Review and implement recommendations. This will begin upon receipt of the plan. Consistently communicate core values. Create visuals for every classroom. Every classroom in the district has a visual poster that has our new mission statement, vision statement, and core values. Incorporate core values into meetings and practices, etc. We've included our core values in all of our presentations, leadership, email taglines, and all communications when appropriate. Explore website update, working with Aptigee on our options. Owen O'Corcoran has been meeting with Aptigee on improvements to the back end of the website. We'll be doing forward-facing improvements to the website later this year. Homeschool connection, middle school, high school conferences. The Blake Middle School and Medfield High School have successful conferences in the fall and scheduled for another round in the spring. Each building had over 900 conferences. Work with school-based organizations. We continue to work with our PTOs, CPAC, MCP, and MMA. The Medfield School Committee has representatives that attend each of these organization meetings. Curriculum and assessment. Continually review MPS curriculum for vertical and horizontal alignment. Create a vertical teams for ELA. The ELA vertical team is created and has several meetings this year. They are currently planning learning walks to view the instruction at various grade levels. So having teachers that work with younger kids see the instruction at the older grades and vice versa. So give them a perspective on what their colleagues are doing. Update curriculum maps for Blake Middle School and Medfield High School. This project is ongoing with the expectation that it will be completed at the end of this year for at least one school. Establish a formalized curriculum review process. This is currently in discussion, is not formalized yet. I'm not going to go through the professional development one because it's like a page and a half.
Yeah.
So you can take a look at, as I said in our budget presentation, we've had a lot of professional development this year, which has been great. 3.4, evaluate the current PK to 12 multi-tiered system of support practices and establish a pre-K to 12 multi-tiered system of support framework. A 17-person committee has begun monthly, and they will have an MTSS framework by the end of the school year, and Mary's doing a lot of work with that. Investigate and align pre-K to 12 social emotional learning curriculum. Create a subcommittee to outline the review process. Subcommittee has been created and the meetings have begun. Dave Worthley, the Director of Social Emotional Learning, is leading this initiative. Streamline student transitions between grades and schools. Continue to establish curriculum and programming to support the transitions. The Medfield High School and Blake staff continue to develop strategies to support transitions grade 8 to grade 9. And the elementary schools have also discussed utilization of special education staffing that could improve services for students. Finance, facilities, and personnel, develop long-term sustainable budget strategies to address district needs, identify energy efficiencies. The solar projects at Blake and Memorial are moving forward, and we are also a member of a Metro West consortium that received a grant recently for electrification of school buses. So we had our first Zoom on that a couple of weeks ago, and then Michael and I will be meeting with them again soon. But it was led by the Needham Public Schools, and they asked us to sign on, and other districts as well to sign on. So the tricky thing is everyone has a third-party provider of buses. So that's what we're kind of working through right now to see how that's going to work. There has been talk of maybe Medfield being a central location for electrification of buses because of where we're the other communities that are a part of that and where we're located. So we're going to be working with them on that as well.
It almost have to be done in conjunction with our friends from the busing.
Right, everyone's got to be a part of that. Continue the partnership with town leadership and warrant committee. The warrant committee and town leadership have been supportive of establishing a special education fund to offset rising costs in that area. In addition, the warrant committee and town leadership have been supported in establishing a fund to offset the cost of a new elementary school. Review MTA special education staffing recommendations. Some of the staffing recommendations made their way into the 23-24 school year out of necessity. The FY25 budget includes an additional 0.5 FTE education team leader to support teachers and students and teachers in special education. Reevaluate the 5-year capital plan. Michael is working with the capital plan committee to identify needs for the district, and he's been a really been a great member of that, and also working with Amy, our facilities director, as well. Address Dale Street through Medfield SBC and capital budget. The Medfield School Building Committee continues to meet and is currently accepting quotes for a comprehensive enrollment study. The FY25 capital budget includes upgrades to the Dale Street School. Collaborate with the town to establish new revenue streams, and that was exploring establishment of bus fees and technology fees. This will certainly be discussed in the next few months with this committee. And then identify additional solar projects. There is no additional work in this area until the current projects are either in process or completed. So we're still kind of looking at that. There's other areas that they've talked to us about, but we need to get the ones that you folks approved moving first before we look at any other ones. But again, it's a 5-year plan, so the next 5 years, I'm sure we'll be able to do something there. So I have an update for you in June as we continue to go through this, and happy to answer any questions or comments or concerns.
One, before taking questions, yeah, it's a great update. We should almost, you're up on stage going through the whole public forum and then going right after this. Maybe in the future we'll do it a different night.
Oh, that's fine.
That's
Whatever works.
Great update, yeah.
I was just gonna say thanks. That sounds like a lot of stuff. My one question, which I heard like so much positive feedback about, was about the conferences. And I think that's such a bridge to our community and communication, all good things.
Right.
Did anything come away as like things we should improve? I can't remember if we talked about that right after them.
So one of the things that we looked at, and we've gotten feedback on both ends, is that we made the decision we had the conversation last year with calendar, to have the middle school and high school on different weeks. So we've gotten feedback both ways. People think that's great, and other people think, well, it'd be kind of nice to have it all on the same day. So the reservation that we have is that if it's all on the same day, it might prevent someone that wants to be in a time slot at the high school, if they have a child at the middle school and wants to see that teacher, but then can't make the teacher they want to see at the high school. So we felt like having 900 on each building for conferences was really effective, and we're concerned about that impacting that. So we're continuing to do the same thing, obviously, in the spring. And we're going to recommend, when we do the calendar, the draft next month, that it stays on separate weeks. That was the feedback. The other thing that was something that we forgot about, and we had to kind of make some plans and adapt to, is the parking for teachers and parents on the middle school day. So that was something that we had to adjust on. So what Nat did is hit all the teachers and staff at the Blake Middle School park behind Blake Middle School, because we have the area right behind. It's almost it's grass and pavement back there. Yeah. So they all parked back there, so then there was parking for parents to come in because they were going in and out. So that, and I think looking at the time slots, because some of them were really filled and some of them weren't, so maybe adjusting some of that. And I think there was good success around having the option for parents to do Zoom versus in person. That was really helpful. I think families really appreciated that. So they liked the Zoom aspect if they were working or couldn't get out because of responsibilities that they had, but others just loved being in person too. So I think it was very positive all around. And we want to just see one more, see it in the spring and get a sense of how that goes, and then make some adjustments if we need to at that point, because we've only done it once ever. So see if there's anything that pops up in the spring that we need to change. But as you said, well, it's really positive feedback from parents.
And the report card reflection that Nat's in the middle school, I think you mentioned. Can you tell me more like what that looks like? And then I guess the follow up would be like at younger ages, do they look at their progress reports and like reflect on them, or is it just something? Because I just love that, just personally, independence for all of our children. I think that's like kind of goal number one for me.
Yeah.
But what does that reflection look
So
like?
he sends out an email and gives kids an option if they want to in advisory to get feedback on what they think about how their grades went, how their scores went, et cetera, on their report card. So just gives them some thinking time to reflect on that, and I think that's a big part of what Nat's about, reflection and being really thoughtful. So I think it works really well in that school. Kids participate, and the question of the week is something he sends out every week too to think about. He sends it to parents too. So I think that's something that he really values student voice even at the younger age. He really values that. So that's just a vehicle for him to get more information, like he did with the homework. He got some really good information and data from kids with the homework in grades 6, 7, and 8. And now he's working with the staff with that, and he and I are going to meet in a couple of weeks to kind of see where that goes with expectations around homework and that kind of thing. So,
sounds like all awesome stuff.
all good stuff. All good stuff.
Appreciate it.
For sure.
Anything else? One, the follow-up from meeting with this chief and the head of the police on school safety. So the three of you would meet each month?
Each month. We missed 1 month, but yeah.
So is that new? I mean,
It is new. Yeah, we just started this fall. Yeah, we've never done that before, so.
anything behind it?
Well, I just think
it's a good
as
practice.
part of the plan, that was something we wanted to do. We wanted to really create the town safety committee in the plan. So and we have great relationships with both departments. We just wanted to formalize that. We meet and talk all the time, but we wanted to formalize it into a meeting, and we meet over at the public safety, and it's been really helpful. One of the things that we did at the last meeting, which is really helpful, is reevaluate the rallying points if students and teachers need to leave the building. So I'll be meeting with a couple of schools the next week or so to talk about the rallying point changes that they've recommended. They had a really good position on that and think that it's important to make this change. So that's what we're going to be doing. As you guys know, I meet with the teachers in the beginning of the year, go over the rallying points. New teachers, that's part of the induction program. That one of the first meetings we do is talk about all that. So it's an important piece of school safety, and they felt like we need to make a change, both of them. So
Yeah, no, that's good to hear. Those are some of the things that
I just
keep
had
me up at night, just making sure.
Oh, for sure.
It does for you.
sure.
Oh, I'm sure. I think for everyone when it comes to that kind of stuff. I have a quick question about the professional development, where I think the 6 through 12 staff met with the woman about microaggressions. Like, would we consider doing that for teachers in younger grades as well? Because
Absolutely.
I think I don't think
Right.
microaggressions start in 6th grade versus like 5th grade, and how to deal with it. So just
Right.
wondering if,
Yeah, I think it was more of because MCPE supported that as a grant,
okay,
and Nat and Brenda had come to me on that to see if that was something we would support, and so they were really behind writing the grant
it.
and getting it forward. So that's why it was 6 through 12.
okay, that makes sense.
And they're actually going to do a community one as well. So they met with the leadership team for a couple hours, whatever date I said in there, in the department chairs, and had a really good time with us. Great PD, really thoughtful, got us thinking, reflecting, et cetera. And then they did the entire staff, and then they're going to do a community event as well, the two of them. So they're fantastic.
That's great.
So that's going to be forthcoming. They think they're going to do it after February vacation, but that was part of the contract too. So,
Great.
but I agree, it could be pre-K to 12. everybody.
Right. It would. I think it would be beneficial for everyone.
Yeah, the other one is just curious. But the exploring AI for educators and school leaders, well, that's a topic we hear about all the time.
Yeah,
Just
so-
wondering,
So the entire DLD, or Design Your Learning, or Digital Learning Day, is all AI this year. So they've been working on that. We have a couple of guest speakers, one from Google and one Justin Wright from MIT, who's been doing some work around this. They're coming to speak to us on DLD, and then we'll do some workshops. We just started sending out information to other districts that want to have any presenters that will do presentations on that day from other districts. Westwood's done a great job with the AI stuff. They've done a really good job, so they're going to have some of their folks come, and so we're going to learn from them and see where they are. It's just around. I think everyone's using it, but everyone's kind of how do we let the kids use it? Do we use it? How do we use it? And that kind of thing. So it's not going away. So we want to make sure that our folks are positioned to use this really well for kids, and making sure our kids know how to use it well too. I mean, I think it's not going away at the higher ed either. So.
Right. One of the things about AI is, right, like what type of sensitive information is going into these prompts, who's
Right.
using it, what do we know? Because once you put it out there, like, right, you have a lot of sensitive school data, like companies deal with the same thing, but
Right.
it's like,
So
how to
what-
be thoughtful
So
around
one
it.
of the things that we do, Owen is on a committee that we belong to at Tech that looks at student data privacy. So we have contracts with a lot of companies.
Yep.
And instead of us individually doing them with a company, we have the entire collaborative, and they have an attorney that does all that for us, so that we, like for Google, for
Right.
example, or whatever, so that Tech does that for us, which is
Great.
really, really good.
Yeah.
Owen did a lot of work on that in the beginning to get that going. But yeah, you're right. It's a real issue.
Right.
It's a real issue for sure.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic though, too. Like you hear about it, I hear about it professionally,
Yeah.
to the point of getting a headache. At the same time, like I think about your DLD, then kind of like maybe even coming back in the spring and saying, hey, this is kind of our, I don't know if it's point of view,
Right. I think it's the point of view.
but I am starting to get, like, as I start to use it more, and I see that too, like you can use ChatGPT on your own, but you
Right.
can't, if you're going to use something gradually, you need it to stay within the
Yes.
firewalls. But
Yep.
I'm blown away. You can have full conversations about things that I really need now, and it's like how it
It's
continues to
crazy, I
advance.
agree.
So,
The state's actually going to use AI to do all the MCAS grading this year. So they did a test last year where they took all the MCAS tests and they looked at them by machine and then by the hand scores that they do for the written. And then they had those scores, and then they ran them all through AI, and the scores are pretty close. So that's what they're going to do with their AI this year. So we'll see.
I mean, that's a smart use of AI, right?
Yeah,
It
for
just
sure.
saves and takes out human error if it's correct.
yeah, so that's
It's not perfect for sure, but it is interesting how
Yes.
close it is to what you're looking for. It's amazing. So I think that's going to be our focus at DLD, which we'll have more information on that as we get closer.
Okay.
But
no, and unless there's any other questions on the strategic plan update. Otherwise, I think it's a great update. I think the only other comments are you're beginning to post the scorecard, I believe, on
it's there. Yeah, it's up there.
online.
And
And
we've played with our what we had talked about at the meeting last week.
yeah, it actually, as I see that, and
yeah.
just for you folks, I talked to Dr. Marston a little bit. If you see, it has a like overarching, how are we doing percentage? And I said, wow, we're pretty high in that percentage to completion. Because I think you were doing it, started at the
Yeah.
initiative level
Right.
or at the priority level. Is that correct?
Strategy.
At the strategy level.
Yeah.
It's great as you go through, each initiative, we're going to start scoring each one as, started, in progress, or complete.
That's great.
So it is, I think it will be a nice way to get an at a glance, how
So
are we doing?
We played around with doing it with the key actions. So we did play around with that a little bit. So right now we have it on the strategy, whether it's progressing, started, whatever. Tim had mentioned, what if we look at doing it on the key actions instead? So we started playing around that with a copy of that. It's just all, data behind the scenes kind of thing. And Neil is working on that for us. And so he did play with it right after we met. Actually, he and I had a scheduled meeting, and he did work on that. So we'll see how that comes out next week, and I'll shoot it to you and see what you think.
Yeah, it would be interesting. And key actions rolling up to strategy.
Right.
So it's just a nicer
like as you report on it too, it's a nice, like, and that's where I say, I think,
It's not as nice visually, I would just warn you, it's not as nice visually because there's a lot of lines because you're doing every single line, but it will get to you where you want to go. I mean, as far as moving up to the strategy.
yeah, no, I can see that. But that's, again, I think it's a nice, like, as I look at the report, it's a lot of progress. Now, some of these we had an idea what was coming, but it will be a nice way to, continue to do that. Okay, so that's the, what about this Medfield School Building Committee update?
Yep, we had a Zoom meeting, I want to say it was last week. We went over requests for quotes on the demographic study. We voted to send out the RFQ. The bids are due back on February 6th. We're going to be meeting on Monday, February 12th, and that's when we'll be reviewing the quotes that came in and deciding if there's one that we want to go forward with.
Okay.
We've gotten one quote so far.
Okay.
We forwarded to the co-chair, so.
And what was the general tone too of the meeting? As we got the,
Yeah, I mean, I think we knew we were
feedback
going to
from
get
MSBA.
together on. Well, that was 2 meetings ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, right? It's hard not to project there. I was bummed. I'm sure some other people were also a little disappointed. Just kind of talking about what some of our next steps can be and how we can be making progress right now while we wait again or figure out what we need to do next. So I think I saw on the agenda for our next meeting, we'll start, I think we're going to be talking about the MSBA and the SOI.
yeah. Okay, thank you. Community engagement and communications update. This is a little more, and Dan, for you as well, a little more, I'd say open-ended, but what are some of the different initiatives? What has gone on? And I think Will and I, at least we had I don't know whether we call it office hours or informal conversations. The concept is office hours. It was a good session. We're glad. I think we've held those where we, you don't always get people, and that's okay. Allows two of us to meet. It also, but it was some good conversation. I think really around priorities, looking at the strategic plan, kind of similar to some of the conversations that came up today. Academic rigor versus other things. And Will, I don't know if you had comments, but I thought it was a good.
Oh yeah, it was good. I mean, the last one Michelle and I did, no one showed up. This one person showed up. Maybe we'll get 2 at the next one, but I'm always happy to talk to people. And it's hard for us to do this job when we put times out there and no one shows up. It's hard for us to represent everybody. But so to the gentleman that came, it was a good conversation, and we, there were concerns like Tim said about academic rigor and some other things that go on, and we're going to do our best to address them. For other stuff, because can we do the other stuff too, like CPAC and
actually, I'd love to hear more about.
I met with the middle school PTO. There was nothing huge other than there's an end of the year barbecue, which I don't know about because I don't have a middle schooler yet. But if you want to volunteer, they will need volunteers. I think it's like in the spring, but they're talking about even as early as like February and March trying to get volunteers because they need lots of them.
It's a big to do.
Yeah. So if you have a middle school child, if you'd like to volunteer, please do because it's like all hands on deck. It sounds like a huge event. CPAC had a meeting just this week. I think Tuesday we had a meeting. I don't think anyone was there other than the board and the parent leaders and site leaders. So again, if you are out there and have any questions about special education, have a student receiving special education, they're doing great work. I gave, a couple months ago, I gave my shout out. Melissa Lowry's in charge of that. I think nothing but good things about her. And the other people I met who were heads of, they're trying to make parent groups based on disabilities as well as having site groups. So if either of those things sound good to you, please reach out. CPAC has a website. But
have they got any interest in the groups? I know they're
So,
breaking it out by
yeah.
like, right, if you're dyslexia is one,
Yeah,
of
it's
them, for instance,
dyslexia,
ADHD.
it's
So
all-
is anyone signing up for
So
that?
so small numbers, like
Okay.
one had 2, and they were trying to come up with a date that would work for the 3 of them, the leader and the 2 other
Okay.
people. One had 5 people, but so not a ton, but some engagement.
Okay.
And I think their hope is maybe when they get the date for that meeting to happen, that when
More
the date's
people
set,
will
more
come.
people come. So I guess all of this from me is just if you want to volunteer, please do. I feel like Michelle gave ask for volunteers or encourage people to get involved. But so I guess I'm just doing the same thing. The middle school will need help for the cookout. Any concerns, questions, thoughts, compliments about special education? Mary goes to all the meetings, our head of student services, which is awesome. I think unbelievable. It was a 2-hour meeting on a Tuesday night. But so there are resources there. So it's like my old boss said, don't worry alone. I would say something like, just get involved. If you want to get involved, please do. Because it's now that I'm on this board and I go to all these meetings, and I've said this about coaching for a long time, but there are a few people that really make this town go, and they could use help. So please help where you can.
That's great. It's a good update. I always think, even like you're saying on a couple of the topics, I don't know whether it was ADHD or which one, 2 people's better than no people.
Yeah,
Right.
for
Sometimes
sure.
big things start small.
For sure.
Right. It at least says, hey, let's get together. And I appreciate you taking, providing that additional support. Again, we're trying to make sure we're reaching out a little more into some of the groups. And we also we've been talking with Michelle and Dr. Marsden, kind of piloting something where we can meet with leaders of those groups as well. And a lot of that conversation, I think, would be contributing to this communications audit. And how can we, do better? We want to hear feedback. So no, that's great. Michelle, I'm not sure if
I was just gonna say that our next informal conversation is virtual, scheduled for Wednesday, February 28th at 7. So there'll be more information about that coming out in the next week or so. But that's what we have next for our next informal conversation.
Okay. And you continue to post
Yeah.
and see that, which is good. And it's really appreciated. I mean, there's a lot of work. I see that there's a lot of thought around it, and it's appreciated. School start times. I'm not sure whether Dr. Marsden, you want to start with that?
Sure, we've identified the staff participants that want to be a part of this process. Right now, we're working on the student representatives, and I know that on your end, the parent representatives, and then the school committee representatives. So once we get all that set, then we're ready to roll. The teachers that I talked to asked if we could do it on a Monday because their staff meetings are Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, so that it made a lot of sense that Monday was the best day for them. So that's why we scheduled it for that day in February. But once we get the names, we'll just send something out and get going on it.
And what's the rough number of staff?
It was, counting administrators, I think it's 12.
Okay.
We had extra two, but we want more people the better. So.
And just remind me, what's the high level expectation for meetings?
So at least once a month for meetings, and additional work outside, whether it's readings or attending a meeting or subcommittee work. So there's definitely outside work that will take place, not just the one meeting.
Okay. And I think we were, what was our total number? Was it 9?
9.
Yeah, we had 9 parents, which we were thrilled, raised their hand and offered to serve. They gave, we didn't officially ask, but gave pretty good background here and there, which was great to hear. And I had a conversation, at least with Michelle. I think we would think, and if you have roughly 12 on the staff plus students, it would be around 9 is probably a pretty good number. So we were thinking for those that have.
Keep all the parents.
Are we getting worried? Are we just worried that it might be too many people? It's okay,
If you
but
look
like
at
I
other
like if you're,
districts, there was a very wide variety on how many people
Okay.
served on this type of committee.
okay, because we'll be looking at like 30 plus people.
You'll end up in the 20s, but
Yeah,
yeah,
in the 20s.
Yeah, I
It's
think
like
I think
12,
north of
9,
20.
21, depending how many students. Plus
So
school
we'll be
committee,
under 25.
yeah,
Yeah.
if we take all 9 parents.
yeah.
So we'll be at 21. So students are limited.
I'm sorry,
Students, how many
Because if we have
students?
21 with just,
2 or 3 students.
27.
yeah.
Yeah.
Still, I just think sometimes when you're trying, like it's a lot, but if you think
It is.
other,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a lot.
Yeah, I think people won't, you'll get everyone at the first meeting, and then after that, you'll get less.
Yes, I agree. I just want to make sure we can like try to come to some decision in a reasonable amount of time, like we had talked about last time, versus like this going on for a year.
We talked a little bit about how TLA, so that's who did the strategic plan, and that was also a very big group. I feel like
Okay.
they did a very good job of coming in with an agenda that allowed breakout and discussion, and then for everybody to come
Perfect.
back. So I think that model would probably be very helpful with this size
Yes.
group. So yeah, that's kind of what we talked about, because I share your concerns there as
Yeah.
well. I recognize that that's a challenge. But I think as long as you come in with a good roadmap and like
Right, and agendas
Yeah.
and keep people on track.
Yeah, like I kind of thought of it. I had similar thoughts as well. I remember when we served the SEL, like when that first kicked off, it's a large group in the library. By design, some of the agenda like the priorities were a little more open-ended, and that's what the administration really needed. But it worked really well. You know, quickly kind of tables assigned to certain topics and then bring feedback
Yeah.
up. I would think it would be similar. So like you can quickly break down, you know, have some conversations, but have purpose in mind for each month. You know, we'd love to see if we can come to a recommendation by June,
Right.
right?
That's what we had talked
Same
about.
thing, right first, rush second. We've at least thought worst case, if we voted, if it trickled into the fall, early fall, it would be
It
okay.
would still be okay for them.
So, you know, I think that, and I asked the question about how many, you know, I think it's reasonable that you have solid representation, you know, at or around the same, you know, from the community as from the staff.
Yes, I do agree with that.
So, you know, unless there's folks on the school committee, I don't think it's not an official vote, but I thought that seemed okay to me, right? Like
Yeah, I would. I
if,
agree.
if we did that. And so I think then we would just notify them, you know, thank you, and make sure we know what the expectation is.
Yep.
And go from there. So that's a good update.
And then who's going to be on it from the school committee?
Yes, so I think at least, Will, you've been part of it, and we'd love to continue on that if
Yeah.
you're
Yeah, that
able.
works. I was under the impression it'd be being Michelle and I.
Yeah, Michelle and I talked. I think I was going to try to step in
Oh, okay.
for a bit. We stay pretty well in sync, and my quote seat, I may also, you know, we may be able to. I'd like representation from others as this evolves.
Yeah.
But that, yeah. So I think it would be me and you, Will.
Perfect.
And yeah, it's some travel, crazy, a little bit, although you have the same thing you've shared before. So, you know, I think each of us may be in a couple other meetings here or there. Okay, good progress. Any other comments on that? Nope. Informational items. I don't know that we.
I don't have any, Mr. Chair.
I have one. I actually have comments more on, but it's more related to future agenda items that I'll get into. Future agenda items, district fees is one. I guess what I would just say is let's add policy updates to future agenda. And I will just say we are finally, we met, the policy subcommittee met last week, which is Leo and myself. I think we made good progress, and starting with our next meeting, we think we're going to have, you know, A and B with some revisions ready to bring forward. But we have policies are going to be standing, you know, get that reading lamp, and there's going to be a fair amount every each meeting that we're going to try to, you know, as best we can bring those forward for first reading, second reading, and then voting in form. which would be starting to establish the new, the new policy manual. And there's a goal we have to try to finish it this year.
Yeah.
I think it's possible that we can do that. So that was one. I guess that kind of bridged the gap between future agenda and information. And then I actually, just to follow up on the strategic plan update, I think it would be worthwhile to make sure we add like the communications work you're doing, kind of present the outcomes to us, which I'm sure will probably happen naturally anyways, but in like that April timeframe.
Yep.
And we may want to look at our schedule. It seems sometimes you get April, May move pretty quick, and then all of a sudden you're into June.
Yeah.
And the June meeting, there's some other things going on. It's right like the day before the end of school. Sometimes it's not like the one you want to cram a lot of work in.
Right.
So we may just want to look at offline our scheduling and either make sure we're staying pace.
Okay.
In those ones. Okay. Next meeting is February 8th. I've told Michelle I would not. I've got something out of town there. I must be at. So Michelle will be running it. And as long as Leo's there, well, I think we'd have quorum regardless.
Right.
So, okay, anything else? Okay, 8:07, so we just went over. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second, or so moved? I don't know.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, great, thank you.